Ambassador Klex had never been so nervous in his 700-year career, and that included the time he accidentally declared war on the Fibonacci Confederation by mispronouncing their greeting ritual. His forearms were trembling as he floated through the pristine corridors of Earth Station Alpha, each step echoing his growing dread. The humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, arriving in their little ships with their friendly smiles and their disturbing habit of asking everyone how they were feeling. Most species had dismissed them as harmless newcomers who'd probably blow themselves up within a century, as was tradition for most newly spacefaring races. But the Vorthan coalition was desperate. The plague had already consumed 12 agricultural worlds, turning their most fertile planets into barren wastelands. Their best scientists called it unstoppable. Their military advisors suggested surrender to whoever might feed their refugees. Their religious leaders declared it divine punishment for something they couldn't quite remember doing wrong. Commander Rita Vasquez greeted him in the station's diplomatic lounge, a woman with graying temples and the kind of calm demeanor that either came from supreme confidence or complete detachment from reality. Klex couldn't tell which, and that terrified him. "Ambassador Klex," she said, pouring herself coffee from a device that seemed unnecessarily complex for hot liquid preparation. "You mentioned an agricultural crisis in your transmission." Klex's translator implant struggled with human casual speech patterns. Did she just call the annihilation of 12 worlds a crisis? Like a scheduling conflict? "Commander Vasquez, with utmost respect, this is not merely a crisis," Klex began, his voice rising to the dramatic pitch that had served him well in 60 years of diplomacy. "This is the darkest hour in Vorthan history. Our children cry for food that no longer grows. Our elders speak of the end times. We are not too proud to beg." Rita sipped her coffee. "Okay, what do you need?" The casualness was jarring. Klex had prepared a 12-part speech about cosmic justice and the bonds between species. We require medical supplies, agricultural assistance, basic foodstuffs to prevent starvation while we attempt recovery. "Sure, we can do that." Rita made a note on her tablet. "I'll have our logistics department put together a package. We'll send along some technical advisors too, help you get back on your feet." Klex blinked all 4 of his compound eyes in sequence, a sign of confusion that Rita politely ignored. "You agree? Just like that?" "Why wouldn't we? Neighbors help neighbors." She finished her coffee. "Give us 3 days to organize the shipment." 3 days. The Vorthan High Council had estimated they might get a response from Earth in 3 months, assuming the humans bothered to respond at all. Most species took years to approve humanitarian aid through proper channels. "Commander, I must stress the urgency of our situation. Millions of lives hang in the balance." "I understand, Ambassador." 3 days. As Klex floated back to his shuttle, he couldn't shake the feeling that Rita Vasquez either didn't comprehend the scope of the catastrophe or knew something he didn't. Given humanity's reputation for either being completely oblivious or mysteriously well-informed, both possibilities kept him awake during his 20-hour journey home. 3 days later, Klex received a transmission that made him question whether his universal translator had suffered a catastrophic malfunction. "Ambassador," his aide Zorik reported, all 6 tentacles writhing with excitement or terror, "Earth has dispatched a vessel. The Walmart Express." Klex stared at the tactical display. The ship approaching Vorthan space was roughly the size of a small moon and appeared to be constructed primarily of cargo bays. Its escort consisted of 12 vessels that his sensors couldn't quite classify, though they radiated the kind of energy signatures typically associated with stellar engineering equipment. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel." A new human face appeared on screen, weathered and friendly, wearing what appeared to be work clothes. "Howdy, Ambassador Klex. Chief Engineer Buck Morrison here. We've got your supply drop ready to go. Hope you don't mind, but we brought along some extra equipment. Figured you might need it." Extra equipment. Klex's military attaché, General Vrix, leaned over to whisper, "Sir, their cargo vessel is reading power signatures consistent with a Class 7 industrial fabricator. The escort ships, I think they're construction platforms." Mr. Morrison, Klex began carefully. "We requested basic medical supplies and food assistance." Buck grinned. "Oh, we got all that. Dr. Rodriguez packed enough medical gear to stock 100 hospitals. Brought seeds, soil conditioners, atmospheric processors, the works. Should have you back to fighting shape in no time. 100 hospitals, for a request to help treat a few thousand plague victims. We also brought some farming equipment," Buck continued. "Nothing fancy, just some terraforming rigs, soil regeneration units, weather control systems. Standard agricultural package." Standard agricultural package. Klex felt a familiar tremor in his primary hands. "Mr. Morrison, terraforming rigs are usually employed for planetary engineering projects spanning centuries." "Well, sure, if you want to take your time about it." Buck scratched his chin. "But your folks need food now, right? We'll have your dead worlds growing crops again inside a month." Before Klex could process that statement, another human appeared on screen. Dr. Elena Rodriguez looked like she'd just stepped out of a laboratory, carrying what appeared to be a medical scanner and wearing the expression of someone who'd already solved the problem at hand. "Ambassador Klex? I've been reviewing the biological samples your people provided. Fascinating plague, really quite elegant in its simplicity. I've prepared 17 different treatment protocols, plus vaccines for some related conditions you probably didn't know you were vulnerable to. Should have this wrapped up by next week." Next week. Their best scientists had declared the plague incurable after decades of research, and this human woman was talking about curing it like she was scheduling a dental cleaning. "Dr. Rodriguez," Klex said slowly, "our medical experts estimated it would take years to develop even basic treatments." Elena laughed, not unkindly. "Oh, bless their hearts. No, this is just a modified hemorrhagic fever with some interesting protein-folding quirks. Nothing we haven't seen before. Actually, I brought some samples of 12 other pathogens you might want to get ahead of. Prevention is always easier than treatment." 12 other pathogens they didn't know existed. Klex felt his secondary nervous system beginning to misfire. "Now, don't you worry about logistics," Buck added. "We brought plenty of hands to help with distribution and setup. Should have medical stations running on all your affected worlds within 48 hours. "How many personnel did you bring?" General Vrix asked. "Oh, just a skeleton crew. About 15,000 technical specialists, plus support staff." 15,000. The Vorthan Coalition's entire diplomatic corps numbered 300 individuals. "Buck," another voice called from off-screen, "should I start deploying the backup fabricators?" "Backup fabricators," Klex whispered. Buck looked apologetic. "Well, we weren't sure how bad things were, so we brought redundant systems. Better to have too much than too little, you know? Dr. Rodriguez insisted on portable hospital units, and I figured your infrastructure might need some updating. Hope that's not a problem." General Vrix was frantically calculating numbers on his tactical display. "Ambassador," he whispered urgently, "their skeleton crew has enough equipment to rebuild our entire agricultural sector 3 times over." And that's when Klex began to suspect that Earth's reputation as harmless newcomers might be the most dangerous underestimate in galactic history. 1 week later, Klex stood on the observation deck of Vorthan Prime's orbital station, watching his dead homeworld come back to life, and wondering if he'd accidentally sold his people's souls to benevolent devils. Buck Morrison's team didn't just solve problems, they obliterated them. The plague-ravaged agricultural zones that had been barren wastelands 7 days ago were now covered in geometric patterns of green growth. The humans had introduced something called crop rotation, which apparently was a revolutionary concept that increased yields by 300% while simultaneously healing the soil. Ambassador, Buck's voice crackled over the comm. Thought you'd like to know we've got the soil regeneration ahead of schedule. Your planet's going to be producing surplus food within the month. Might want to think about what you'll do with the extra. Klex's people hadn't had enough food to feed themselves in 2 years, and now Buck was worried about surplus management. Dr. Rodriguez had been even more efficient, if that were possible. She'd not only cured the plague, she'd created vaccines for 6 other diseases the Vorthans hadn't even known they were vulnerable to. Her medical teams had set up treatment centers that were somehow more advanced than the Coalition's best hospitals, and she'd trained local staff to operate equipment that seemed to run mostly on good intentions and human optimism. The thing about biological warfare, she'd explained while casually curing a 1,000-year-old genetic disorder, is that most species think too small. You target one pathogen, maybe 2. But if you really want to help someone, you've got to think systemically. Preventive medicine, genetic therapy, nutritional optimization. It's all connected. Biological warfare. She'd said it like she was discussing gardening techniques. But it was the casual comments that kept Klex awake at night. Buck mentioning that they'd brought backup equipment in case things were worse than expected, then revealing construction platforms that could apparently rebuild entire solar systems. Dr. Rodriguez offhandedly noting that she'd worked on similar problems in the Proxima incident, despite Earth's official records showing no involvement in any Proxima incident. And then there were the escort ships. Ambassador, General Vriux reported, I've been analyzing the human vessels. They're not just construction platforms. Each one has enough firepower to sterilize a planet, but they're disguised as industrial equipment. Disguised? The weapon systems are integrated into the fabrication arrays, all-purpose technology. They can build you a hospital or glass your capital city using the same equipment. Klex felt his tertiary stomach beginning to rebel. Have you mentioned this to Commander Vasquez? I tried. She said, well, you never know when you might need to do some emergency demolition. Rix's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Emergency demolition, sir. That afternoon, Klex finally worked up the courage to ask Buck directly about Earth's capabilities. Mr. Morrison, I hope you don't mind me asking, but exactly how many operations like this does Earth manage simultaneously? Buck paused in his review of atmospheric processor readings. Operations like what? Humanitarian missions. Planetary recovery projects. Oh, well, let's see. Buck scratched his chin thoughtfully. Elena's got 3 other medical emergencies running right now. Something in the Centauri cluster, a genetic plague in Andromeda sector, and I think there's a radiation cleanup in the Magellanic Clouds. On the engineering side, we've got maybe 15 major infrastructure projects, a half a dozen terraforming jobs, and I lost count of the agricultural assistance programs. 15 major infrastructure projects, a half a dozen terraforming jobs, and they'd described helping the Vorthans as a minor assignment. How many people does Earth have working on these projects? Hard to say. Maybe 2 million technical specialists in the field, plus support staff. Why? 2 million. The entire population of educated professionals in the Vorthan Coalition was roughly 50,000. Buck, Klex said carefully, when Earth joined the galactic community, you claimed to be a peaceful species focused on exploration and cultural exchange. Buck's grin was entirely too innocent. Well, we are. Peaceful as can be. We just like to help folks out when they're having trouble. And the military vessels? What military vessels? Klex gestured toward the orbital display showing Buck's escort ships. Those vessels, with the weapons integrated into their construction systems. Buck looked genuinely puzzled. Oh, those aren't military vessels, Ambassador. Those are just work trucks with some extra attachments. You never know when you might need to clear some debris or deal with hostile wildlife. Hostile wildlife. General Vrix later informed him that those work trucks could individually engage and defeat the Coalition's entire battle fleet. As Klex watched another dead world bloom with human-engineered crops, he began to suspect that Earth's definition of peaceful might be somewhat more terrifying than most species' definition of aggressively expansionist. Just when Klex thought his worldview couldn't be shattered any further, Admiral James Tank Patterson arrived with what humans called a small escort. The fleet that dropped out of hyperspace above Vorthan Prime consisted of 12 dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in Coalition records, 50 destroyers that radiated enough firepower to crack moons, and a command ship that appeared to have been constructed from compressed neutron stars and human stubbornness. Klex was hyperventilating into his emergency oxygen mask when Admiral Patterson's transmission came through. "Ambassador Klex, Admiral Patterson here. Sorry we're running late. Had to swing by the Andromeda front first, but that situation's pretty well wrapped up now." Andromeda front. As in the Andromeda Galaxy, 2 million light-years away. "Admiral," Klex wheezed, "your transmission mentioned a front. As in military operations?" Tank looked sheepish, which was disturbing on a man who commanded enough firepower to sterilize star systems. "Yeah, nothing too serious. Some aggressive artificial intelligence decided it wanted to convert all organic life into computational matrices. Standard Tuesday stuff, really. We had to explain why that was a bad idea." Standard Tuesday stuff. Converting organic life into computational matrices was the kind of existential threat that kept galactic civilizations awake at night, and humans treated it like a minor scheduling inconvenience. "How long has Earth been fighting this war?" "Oh, about 18 months. Would have been wrapped up sooner, but we had to be careful not to damage any inhabited systems. The locals in Andromeda are pretty decent folks once you get past the whole being converted into digital consciousness thing." 18 months. Earth had been casually waging an intergalactic war while simultaneously running humanitarian operations across the local galaxy, and nobody had noticed. "Admiral, when Earth joined the galactic community, there was no mention of military capabilities of this scale." Tank's expression grew genuinely apologetic. "Well, Ambassador, you never asked. And honestly, most folks seem more comfortable when we don't mention the military side of things. Tends to make people nervous." General Vrix leaned over to whisper urgently in Klex's ear. "Sir, I'm reading power signatures consistent with planet-killer weapons on every ship in their formation. Their smallest escort vessel could defeat our entire military." "We heard Buck and Elena were doing great work down here," Tank continued. "Thought we'd stop by and see if you needed anything else. Maybe some infrastructure security, orbital defense platforms, that sort of thing." "Security against what?" "Oh, you know, the usual. Pirates, aggressive neighbors, interdimensional incursions, time travelers, that sort of thing. The galaxy's a dangerous place if you're not prepared." Interdimensional incursions. Time travelers. Klex was beginning to understand why humans seemed so casually confident about everything. "Admiral, exactly what does Earth consider a serious threat?" Tank thought about it for a moment. "Well, last year we had to deal with some elder gods trying to remake reality according to their aesthetic preferences. That was a bit of a challenge. And there was that whole thing with the parallel universe where humanity never invented coffee. Had to shut down about 12-dimensional breaches to keep that from spreading. Elder gods, parallel universes, and Earth was treating the Vorthan agricultural crisis like a neighborhood barbecue. Are there other species with capabilities similar to Earth's? Not really, no. Most folks tend to focus on one thing, you know? Military power or technology or cultural development. Humans just sort of do everything. Probably because we're too stubborn to admit when something's impossible." That evening, Klex sat in his quarters staring at a bottle of Vorthan wine that could no longer provide adequate numbing for his situation. On his desk lay reports that made increasingly less sense the more he read them. Buck's team had finished rebuilding the agricultural infrastructure of 12 worlds in 2 weeks. Dr. Rodriguez had eliminated not just the plague but 17 other diseases they hadn't known existed. And Admiral Patterson's small escort was apparently just passing through on their way back from preventing an artificial intelligence from converting an entire galaxy into a computer program. All while describing these achievements as minor routine operations. Klex poured himself another drink and wondered what exactly his people had gotten themselves into by asking Earth for help. And more importantly, what Earth might ask for in return. 3 weeks later, Commander Rita Vasquez finally took pity on Klex's deteriorating mental health and invited him for what she called a clarifying conversation. They met in her office, a surprisingly modest space overlooking Earth Station Alpha's main docking bay, where a steady stream of vessels arrived and departed on missions Klex was beginning to suspect span multiple galaxies. "Ambassador, you look like you've seen a ghost," Rita observed, pouring 2 cups of that omnipresent human coffee. "Or possibly several ghosts having a philosophical argument about the nature of existence." Klex accepted the cup gratefully. He'd developed a taste for the bitter human beverage, which seemed appropriate given the bitter truths he'd been discovering. "Commander Vasquez, I must ask directly, what exactly is Earth?" Rita smiled, the kind of smile that suggested she'd been waiting for this question for weeks. "That's a fair question. Earth is a lot of things, Ambassador. But mostly, we're gardeners." "Gardeners?" Think about it. What do gardeners do? They plant seeds, they tend growing things, they protect their gardens from pests and diseases. They plan for seasons, they prepare soil, they create conditions for life to flourish. Klex stared at her. "You're describing your humanitarian operations." "Exactly. For the past 50 years, we've been quietly establishing what you might call humanitarian outposts throughout the local galaxy. Medical stations, agricultural research centers, educational facilities, all staffed by friendly humans who just want to help. And the military capabilities." Rita's smile took on a slightly sharper edge. "Well, gardeners also need tools to deal with weeds, don't they? Sometimes you need a gentle hand, sometimes you need to break out the industrial equipment." "The Andromeda campaign?" "Big weeds, very aggressive. The kind that try to turn entire civilizations into compost." Rita sipped her coffee. "But here's the thing, Ambassador. We're not conquerors. Conquerors take territory, extract resources, impose systems. We prefer to cultivate allies." "Allies for what?" "For the future. The galaxy's a big place, full of wonderful civilizations just trying to get by. But it's also full of things that want to hurt them. Aggressive species, artificial intelligences with poor social skills, interdimensional entities with questionable artistic taste. The usual cosmic horror catalog." Klex felt pieces clicking together in his mind. Earth has been building a network. A garden, yes. Dozens of species, all thriving, all connected by bonds of mutual assistance and shared defense. We help you rebuild your worlds. You help us help the next species that needs assistance. Everyone benefits, everyone contributes what they can. And if someone threatens this garden... Rita's expression grew cold in a way that made Klex profoundly grateful to be sitting on the ally side of the table. "Then we explain very clearly why that's a poor decision. Usually they listen. Sometimes they require more convincing." "The fleet capabilities that Admiral Patterson demonstrated? Think of them as very efficient teaching aids." Rita stood and gestured toward the window, where another massive human vessel was docking. "Ambassador, your people asked for help with a plague and some dead worlds. We could have just sent medical supplies and wished you luck. But that's not gardening, that's just charity. So instead you rebuilt our entire civilization. We gave you the tools and knowledge to rebuild yourselves, plus the security to keep it once you've built it. That's gardening. That's sustainable." Klex stared out at the steady flow of human ships, each one carrying aid, expertise, or protection to some corner of the galaxy. How many species are part of this network? 47 official members, 18 associates, and about 30 more that we're keeping an eye on. Rita returned to her seat. The Vorthan Coalition just became number 48. We didn't agree to join anything. No, but you accepted our help, and now you're safe, prosperous, and grateful. That makes you part of the Garden, whether you signed a treaty or not. Rita's smile returned. Don't worry, Ambassador. The membership benefits far outweigh the obligations. What obligations? Oh, the usual. Don't attack other Garden members, share useful technologies, provide assistance when you can. And if some cosmic horror shows up wanting to eat your solar system, you let us know so we can explain to it why that's rude. Klex sat in silence for several minutes, processing the revelation that his people had inadvertently joined the galaxy's most powerful alliance simply by asking for medical supplies. Commander, he said finally, Earth's approach to diplomacy is terrifying. Thank you, Ambassador. We prefer effective, but terrifying works too. 6 months later, Ambassador Klex stood before the Galactic Council wearing his new title as Earth's official liaison with all the enthusiasm of someone who'd been voluntarily conscripted into explaining why the friendly humans weren't actually planning to conquer the galaxy. The council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from a dozen species voiced their concerns about humanity's growing influence. Klex listened to their complaints with the weary patience of someone who'd tried to explain quantum physics to houseplants. The humans have established medical facilities in our territory without proper authorization, complained Ambassador Threx of the crystalline hegemony, their voice resonating like breaking glass. They've introduced agricultural techniques that make our traditional farming methods obsolete, added Minister Vox from the Feathered Assembly. Their ships are everywhere, offering assistance we didn't request, grumbled the representative from the Hive Collective. Klex sighed, a sound that somehow conveyed both infinite patience and bottomless exhaustion. Distinguished colleagues, let me ask you a simple question. How many of your worlds are currently experiencing famine, plague, or ecological collapse? The chamber fell silent. Several representatives looked uncomfortable. Because 6 months ago, the Vorthan Coalition was facing extinction. Today our agricultural output has tripled, we've eliminated 17 major diseases, and our orbital defenses could repel an invasion by any 3 of your fleets combined. Klex gestured toward the tactical display, all thanks to Earth's concerning interference. But their methods are so efficient, protested Ambassador Threx. It's unnatural. Unnatural, Klex repeated slowly. Yes, Yuntas. I suppose it is unnatural to solve problems quickly and effectively instead of forming committees to study the formation of subcommittees to investigate the possibility of maybe eventually addressing the issue. The Feathered Assembly's Minister Vox ruffled nervously. But surely you see the threat they represent. Their military capabilities are unprecedented. Klex leaned forward, fixing Vox with a look that had taken him 6 months of dealing with human casual omnipotence to perfect. Minister, would you like to know what the real threat is? The real threat is what happens when you mistake Earth's helpfulness for weakness. He activated the holographic display, showing recent intelligence reports that made several representatives gasp audibly. 3 weeks ago, the Devourer Collective attempted to establish a beachhead in the Proxima sector. Earth's response time was 6 hours. The engagement lasted 14 minutes. There were no human casualties. The Devourer Collective no longer exists as a functional civilization. The chamber was dead silent now. 2 months ago, an interdimensional parasite tried to infest the agricultural worlds of the Centauri Alliance. Dr. Elena Rodriguez treated it like a minor pest problem. She didn't just eliminate the infestation. She developed vaccines to prevent similar intrusions across 47 dimensional barriers. Ambassador Threx's crystalline form was vibrating at a frequency that suggested either deep thought or impending structural failure. You're suggesting we should be grateful for human intervention. I'm suggesting you should be grateful that when humans intervene, they do it with medical supplies and agricultural equipment instead of planet-killing battleships. Klex stood, his forearms spread in a gesture that encompassed the entire assembly. Every single one of your civilizations has benefited from human assistance. Whether you've acknowledged it or not, your shipping lanes are safer because human patrols eliminate piracy. Your planets are more fertile because human agricultural techniques have spread through trade networks. Your people live longer because human medical knowledge has been shared freely with your researchers. But at what cost? Minister Vox demanded. What do they want in return? Klex smiled, an expression he'd learned from Rita Vasquez that somehow managed to be reassuring and terrifying simultaneously. They want you to thrive. They want you to be safe, prosperous, and capable of helping the next species that finds itself in trouble. That's it. That's the entire human agenda. That's surprisingly benign, admitted the Hive Collective's representative. Oh, it's absolutely benign, Klex agreed. Right up until someone threatens the garden. Then you discover that the friendly humans with their helpful attitudes and their efficient solutions are also the most comprehensively dangerous force in the known universe. As the council session concluded and representatives filed out in various states of contemplation and concern, Klex received a message from Earth Station Alpha. Another species had requested assistance with an ecological disaster. Commander Vasquez was asking if the Vorthan Coalition could spare any agricultural specialists to help with the relief effort. Klex looked at the request and sighed. 6 months ago, his people had been dying. Now they were being asked to help save another civilization. He thought about Rita's explanation of gardening, about the network of mutual assistance and protection that humanity had cultivated across the galaxy. He approved the assistance request and settled back in his chair to draft his report to the Vorthan High Council, knowing they'd approve Earth's latest small project with the same bemused terror that had become his default emotional state. After all, they were gardeners now too, whether they'd meant to be or not. And honestly, Klex reflected as he watched another human medical ship depart for parts unknown. There were worse fates than being part of the galaxy's most aggressively helpful civilization,